Chapter 1. Love sat beside them. Love didn't arrive loudly. It didn't demand attention. It simply sat beside them. Quiet, patient, waiting to be felt. Adrian never noticed the exact moment it began. He only knew that things felt different when Lucas was near. Lucas always waited for him. Not obviously. Just long enough for Adrian to catch up. Long enough to walk side by side. They often ended up sitting next to each other. Not planned. Not discussed. It just happened. Adrian would sit down. And a few seconds later, Lucas would take the seat beside him. Close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Close enough that Adrian could feel warmth without contact. Sometimes their hands rested near each other. Not touching. Just close. And that closeness felt important. Lucas talked easily. His voice was soft but full of life. Stories that didn't need meaning. Words that felt like comfort. Adrian listened quietly. Not because he had nothing to say, but because listening to Lucas felt good. He liked how Lucas's laughter filled silence. Liked how it made the space feel lighter. There were moments when conversation faded. When silence took over. But it wasn't awkward. It felt safe. Their eyes would meet. Briefly at first. Then for a little longer each time. Neither rushed to look away. Adrian felt something warm settle in his chest. Not excitement. Not fear. Something gentle. Something steady. Lucas noticed it too. He noticed how Adrian relaxed beside him. How his shoulders softened. How his breathing slowed. "You're quiet," Lucas said once, his voice gentle. Adrian didn't explain. Didn't apologize. "I like listening," he replied. Lucas smiled. That smile stayed with Adrian long after. There was no confession. No dramatic moment. Just two people sitting close. Sharing air. Sharing time. And love. Love sat between them, unseen. Already choosing them both. Some love doesn't rush. It waits beside you, until you notice. Chapter 2. Sitting too close. At some point, sitting close stopped feeling like a coincidence. Adrian noticed it first, not as a thought, but as a feeling. Whenever Lucas sat beside him, the space between them seemed to disappear on its own. Their shoulders brushed lightly. Not enough to startle. Just enough to be felt. Adrian didn't move away. Neither did Lucas. They sat like that often, close enough to share warmth, close enough to sense each other's breathing. Sometimes their knees touched. Sometimes their arms rested so near that a single movement would connect them. Yet neither rushed it. Lucas leaned back slightly, relaxed, his presence easy and open. Adrian leaned in without realizing it, drawn by comfort rather than intention. "You don't pull away," Lucas said softly one day. Adrian glanced at him. "Should I?" Lucas smiled, slow and warm. "I like that you don't." That smile lingered. Adrian felt it settle deep inside him. A quiet reassurance. A permission to stay exactly where he was. They talked about small things again. Nothing important. Everything important. Lucas's voice filled the space gently. Adrian listened, his attention drifting not to the words, but to the closeness. How Lucas smelled faintly like warmth. How his laughter softened the air. At one point, silence returned. But this silence felt different from all the others Adrian had known. It wasn't heavy. It wasn't empty. It felt shared. Lucas shifted slightly, their shoulders pressing together fully this time. Adrian felt the contact clearly now. His breath caught, just for a second. Lucas noticed. "You okay?" he asked, quietly. Adrian nodded. "Yes." And he meant it. Because sitting too close didn't feel wrong. It felt natural. Like something he had been missing without knowing it. They stayed that way until time slipped past them unnoticed. Two people. One shared space. And a closeness that no longer needed excuses. Love doesn't. Chapter 3. Smiles meant only for one. Adrian didn't smile often. Not the kind of smile that came easily or stayed long. But Lucas noticed something change when they were together. Lucas liked talking, about anything, about nothing. Sometimes he exaggerated stories just to see Adrian's reaction. Sometimes he teased lightly, knowing Adrian would pretend not to care. And then, it happened. A small smile. Barely there. But Lucas saw it. He paused mid-sentence, eyes lighting up. "There," he said softly. "That." Adrian frowned slightly. "What?" "That smile," Lucas replied, leaning closer. "You don't give it to everyone." Adrian looked away, a little embarrassed. But the smile didn't disappear. Lucas felt something warm bloom in his chest. Not pride. Not excitement. Something gentler. He liked being the reason. They sat together again, close enough that their shoulders touched. Lucas spoke more quietly now, like he didn't want to break the moment. Adrian listened, his attention drifting between Lucas's voice and the way his presence felt, steady, comforting. At one point, Lucas laughed softly. Adrian smiled again. This time, he didn't hide it. Lucas's heart skipped. "That one," he whispered, almost to himself, "that one feels like it's mine." Adrian finally looked at him. "Is that bad?" he asked. Lucas shook his head slowly. "No," he said warmly. "It feels special." The word lingered between them. Special. Adrian felt it too, the way smiling near Lucas felt different. Safer. Easier. They shared a quiet moment after that, smiles fading into calm expressions. But something had changed. A smile had become a bridge. A small thing that carried something big. Lucas leaned back slightly, still close. "Promise me something," he said gently. Adrian raised an eyebrow. "What?" "Don't stop smiling like that," Lucas said. "Especially not with me." Adrian didn't answer right away. Then, softly. "I won't." Love is when someone notices your smallest smile and treats it like a gift. Chapter 4. The Touch of Calm. It had been a long day. Adrian had one of those rare days when everything went wrong. Deadlines, pressure, noise, it all piled up until he felt that old, familiar storm rising inside. He didn't speak to anyone. Not even Lucas. But Lucas noticed. Of course he did. When Adrian didn't reply to his messages, Lucas showed up anyway. Quietly. Without asking for permission. He found Adrian sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. Lucas didn't say anything at first. He just walked closer and sat beside him, close enough for their knees to touch. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then, Lucas spoke softly. "You don't have to pretend with me, you know." Adrian looked up, tired eyes meeting Lucas's warm ones. Something in that gaze broke the wall he'd been holding. Without a word, Lucas reached out, slow, careful, and touched Adrian's hand. It was a small thing. But it felt like calm spreading through the chaos. Adrian didn't pull away. He just breathed. For the first time that day. Lucas smiled faintly. "Bad day?" he asked. Adrian nodded. "Then let me fix it," Lucas said, shifting closer. He gently guided Adrian's head to rest on his shoulder. Adrian hesitated for a second, then let it happen. Lucas wrapped an arm around him, protective, warm. "See?" "No words needed," he whispered. Adrian closed his eyes. That warmth, that heartbeat near his ear, it grounded him. Minutes passed. Neither spoke. The world outside didn't matter anymore. Adrian could hear Lucas humming quietly, a low, calming tune. He didn't know the song, but it felt like home. Lucas's fingers brushed lightly through Adrian's hair, gentle and steady. Every motion said, "You're safe. I've got you." And for once, Adrian believed it. Lucas whispered with a teasing tone, "If you fall asleep here, I'm not letting you go." Adrian smiled against his shoulder. "Maybe I don't want to go." Lucas chuckled softly, tightening his hold just a little. "Good," he murmured. "Stay as long as you want. Sometimes love doesn't speak loudly. It just sits beside you, holds your hand, and reminds you that storms don't last forever." Chapter 5: Jealousy, Soft and Quiet. Adrian didn't realize it at first. The feeling came slowly. A tightness in his chest. A restlessness he couldn't name. Lucas was laughing. Talking easily, as he always did. But he wasn't laughing with Adrian. Someone else stood close to him. Too close. Adrian watched silently. He didn't feel anger. He felt unsettled. Lucas's laughter sounded the same. Yet something about the moment felt different. Before Adrian could think about it, his hand reached out. It found Lucas's wrist. Not rough. Not forceful. Just there. Lucas looked down in surprise, then up at Adrian. Their eyes met. The noise around them faded. "You okay?" Lucas asked softly. Adrian hesitated. "I don't like this," he admitted quietly. Lucas's expression softened immediately. He stepped closer, turning fully toward Adrian. "This?" he asked gently. Adrian nodded. Lucas didn't tease. Didn't laugh. Instead, he lifted Adrian's hand, holding it properly now. Secure. Intentional. "I'm here," Lucas said. "With you." The words settled deep. The tension in Adrian's chest loosened. Lucas leaned in slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to worry." Then, slowly, he leaned in and pressed a soft kiss to Adrian's cheek. Brief. Warm. Adrian's breath caught. Lucas smiled gently. "That's just for you." Adrian felt heat rise to his face. But he didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned closer. The jealousy faded, replaced by something steadier. Trust. They stayed close after that, hands still joined. The world returning slowly around them. But something had changed. Adrian understood now. It wasn't jealousy he felt. It was care. Jealousy fades when love reassures. And chooses you softly. Chapter 6: Held without words. That night, the world felt quieter. Not because it had changed. But because they were together. They lay side by side. Not rushed. Not unsure. Just close. Adrian turned slightly, facing Lucas. Lucas noticed immediately and opened his arms without asking. Adrian hesitated only for a second. Before moving closer. Resting his head against Lucas's chest. The steady rhythm of Lucas's heartbeat met him there. It was calming. Lucas wrapped his arms around Adrian slowly. Like he was holding something precious. Like he understood how important gentleness was. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Adrian's fingers curled lightly into the fabric of Lucas's shirt. A quiet anchor. Lucas rested his chin softly on Adrian's head. Breathing in time with him. The world outside faded. After a long moment, Adrian whispered. "I feel okay like this." Lucas's voice came just as softly. "You always can." Lucas's hand moved in slow circles along Adrian's back. Not to soothe. Just to stay connected. Adrian closed his eyes. The tension he carried so often slipped away in Lucas's arms. Time passed unnoticed. Eventually, Adrian's breathing slowed. Deep and even. Lucas smiled faintly. Pressing a gentle kiss into Adrian's hair. "I've got you," he murmured. Adrian stirred slightly, but didn't wake. He only moved closer. as if answering the promise. They stayed like that, wrapped around each other, held by warmth and quiet understanding. Sleep came gently. Not alone. Not afraid. Together. Some love doesn't speak. It holds until the world feels safe again. Chapter 7. Almost. The air between them felt different now. Not heavy. Not awkward. Charged. They stood close. Close enough that Lucas could feel Adrian's breath. Close enough that stepping back would feel like a loss. Adrian's eyes lingered on Lucas's face longer than before. On the curve of his smile. On the softness in his eyes. Lucas noticed. He always did. Slowly, Lucas lifted his hand, fingers hovering near Adrian's cheek. Not touching yet. "Can I?" he asked quietly. The question wasn't rushed. It wasn't assumed. It was gentle. Adrian's heart beat faster. But not in fear. He closed his eyes for a moment, grounding himself in the closeness. In the warmth still lingering from the night before. Then he opened them again. Not yet. Instead of stepping away, Adrian leaned forward. Just enough to rest his forehead against Lucas's. The contact was soft. Intimate. Lucas exhaled slowly, resting his hand lightly on Adrian's waist. Not pulling. Not pushing. Just there. They stayed like that, breathing together. Adrian whispered. "I want this. I just need a moment." Lucas smiled softly, his voice low and steady. "I'm not going anywhere." That reassurance settled something deep inside Adrian. Lucas's thumb brushed lightly against Adrian's side. A grounding touch. Adrian relaxed. Their foreheads stayed pressed together. Eyes closed now. No kiss yet. But everything else was already there. Trust. Desire. Choice. When they finally pulled back, it wasn't far. Just enough to look at each other again. Lucas smiled gently. "Soon." Adrian nodded. "Soon." And somehow, waiting felt just as beautiful. Some kisses don't happen on lips. They happen in the space where hearts lean closer. Chapter 8. The first kiss. The moment didn't rush them. It waited. They stood facing each other, close enough that the space between them felt fragile. Like it might disappear if either of them breathed too deeply. Adrian's heartbeat was loud in his ears. Not frantic. Just aware. Lucas didn't move at first. He let the moment exist. Let Adrian feel in control of it. Adrian lifted his gaze slowly. Lucas's eyes were soft. Open, warm, patient. That was what made Adrian step closer. Not the desire. The safety. His hand rose hesitantly, fingers brushing against Lucas's sleeve. Lucas responded immediately, turning slightly, offering himself closer without pulling Adrian in. Their foreheads touched again. Familiar now. Adrian whispered. "I'm ready." Lucas's breath caught softly. "Tell me if you want me to stop." Adrian nodded. Then, slowly, Lucas leaned in. The kiss was gentle. Barely there at first. A soft meeting of lips. Careful and unhurried. Adrian didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned in just a little more. The kiss deepened, not in urgency, but in certainty. Lucas's hand rested at Adrian's waist, warm and steady. Adrian's fingers curled lightly into Lucas's shirt, grounding himself in the reality of it. They moved together naturally. As if they had been waiting for this rhythm. When they finally pulled back, they stayed close. Foreheads touching, breaths mingling. Adrian smiled softly. That felt right. Lucas smiled back, brushing his thumb gently along Adrian's cheek. It felt like you. They shared another brief kiss. Just as soft. Just as meaningful. Not because they needed more, but because they wanted to remember the feeling. They stayed like that for a long moment afterward, wrapped in quiet smiles and shared warmth. Nothing else needed to be said. Some kisses don't take your breath away. They give it back, steadier than before. Chapter 9, Playful Romance. After the first kiss, something changed. Not the world. Not the people around them. Just them. Adrian felt lighter. Less guarded. More willing to let himself enjoy the small moments. Lucas noticed immediately. He grinned that mischievous grin Adrian had learned to recognize, the one that meant trouble. Or kisses. "You're smiling again," Lucas teased, leaning a little too close. "You can't hide it from me." Adrian pretended to frown. "I'm not," he said, voice tight but failing completely. Because the corner of his mouth betrayed him. Lucas laughed softly. "And yet, there it is." Before Adrian could protest, Lucas leaned in and brushed a quick kiss to his cheek. Adrian froze, then blinked, caught between embarrassment and delight. "That was unfair," he said, though his lips quirked upwards. Lucas only smiled wider. "Unfair? Or just playful?" he asked, tilting his head. "Your choice." Adrian rolled his eyes, but his heart was racing anyway. He realized he was enjoying it. More than he expected. The teasing continued in small ways. A finger brushing Adrian's hand. A shoulder nudging him. Whispered comments that made him smile before he even realized it. At one point, Adrian decided to retaliate. He leaned in quickly and pressed a soft, fleeting kiss to Lucas's lips. Lucas blinked in surprise, then grinned, obviously delighted. "That was my first warning," he said, voice playful. "And now I know you can be dangerous too." Adrian's cheeks heated. "Maybe I like being dangerous," he muttered. Lucas leaned closer again, resting his forehead lightly against Adrian's. "You're already dangerous," he whispered. "But in the best way." They stayed like that for a long moment, smiles soft, breaths mingling. No words needed. Playful teasing had become another language between them. A way to say, "I like you. I'm here. You're mine." Adrian realized something. Even in light-hearted moments, Lucas made him feel seen. Felt chosen. Felt safe. Lucas, in turn, loved that Adrian could now laugh, tease, and share joy so freely. It was proof that the first kiss had changed everything. They laughed softly together. Foreheads still touching. Hands brushing occasionally. And hearts full of a quiet, unspoken promise. Love isn't always serious. Sometimes it's a soft laugh, a playful kiss, a shared smile. And it feels like home. Chapter 10, Holding Through Heavy Days. Some days were heavier than others. Days when the world felt sharp, loud, and exhausting. Days when Adrian carried more than he wanted to show. On those days, Lucas didn't need to ask. He just knew. That evening, Adrian slumped into a chair, shoulders tight. Eyes distant, thoughts tangled. Lucas appeared beside him quietly, without a word. He didn't pry. He didn't comment. Instead, he simply extended his hand. A silent invitation. Adrian looked up, unsure for a moment, then allowed Lucas to pull him gently into a hug. Not a quick embrace, not a casual comfort. But a hold that said, "I've got you. I won't let go." Lucas pressed his cheek to the top of Adrian's head. "I'm here," he whispered softly. "And you don't have to face this alone." Adrian exhaled slowly, letting tension slip from his shoulders. He wrapped his arms around Lucas without hesitation. Clinging lightly, not out of need, but trust. Lucas shifted slightly, one arm around Adrian's back, the other resting lightly on his waist. The warmth, the pressure, the closeness. It grounded Adrian, making the chaos outside fade away. Minutes passed in silence. No words were necessary. Just heartbeats, soft breathing, and the steady presence of someone who truly cared. "I feel lighter," Adrian murmured, almost to himself. Lucas smiled faintly, brushing a soft kiss onto Adrian's temple. "You'll always have me," he said, quietly. "No matter how heavy the day feels." Adrian rested his head fully against Lucas's chest, feeling the familiar rhythm of his heartbeat. It steadied him. It reminded him that he didn't have to face life alone anymore. They stayed that way for a long while. The world outside continues its noise. But here, between them, it was calm. Lucas hummed softly, a gentle, comforting sound, almost like a lullaby. Adrian closed his eyes, letting the comfort sink in. Even in the heaviest moments, he knew he had a safe place. A warm, steady presence that would never let him fall. Love doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply holds you tight. Until you can breathe again. Chapter 11: Nights of Belonging. The night outside was quiet. Streetlights cast soft, golden glows through the window, painting the room in warmth. Adrian lay on his side, curled slightly, still feeling the lingering tension of the day. Lucas moved closer, careful not to startle him. Every movement was slow, deliberate, intentional. When Lucas's arm found its place around Adrian's waist, the world seemed to pause. Not a word was needed, just the steady warmth pressing against him. Adrian tilted his head, resting gently against Lucas's chest. He could hear the slow rhythm of Lucas's heartbeat, calm and steady, a silent promise that he was there. "You awake?" Lucas murmured softly. "Just a little," Adrian replied, voice barely above a whisper. "I like being here." Lucas pressed a gentle kiss to the top of Adrian's head. "I'm glad," he whispered back. "Because I'm not going anywhere. Not tonight. Not ever." Adrian let out a soft sigh, relaxing fully into Lucas's embrace. The heaviness of the day melted into the quiet intimacy of the night. He felt safe, cherished, unseen, all at once. Lucas shifted slightly, drawing Adrian closer without breaking the hold. Their legs brushed softly, hands entwined lightly, bodies warm together. "I feel like I belong here," Adrian murmured, his voice trembling slightly. Lucas smiled faintly, pressing a soft kiss to Adrian's temple. "You do," he said. "You belong here. With me. Always." The two of them stayed like that. Words unnecessary. Just the quiet sound of their breathing. The gentle heartbeat of a love that didn't need grand gestures to be real. Lucas hummed softly, almost like a lullaby. And Adrian felt his eyes grow heavy. Sleep didn't feel like escape, it felt like permission. Permission to trust, to rest, to belong. They drifted off together. Adrian's head still on Lucas's chest. Lucas's arms holding him steady. Hearts aligned, bodies close. Even the quiet night seemed to respect them. Leaving the room untouched, soft, and calm. Love is where you fall asleep without fear. And wake up knowing you are home. Chapter 12: Love Without Words. The morning sunlight filtered gently through the curtains. It touched everything softly, painting the room in gold and rose tones. Adrian stirred first, blinking sleepily, still wrapped in the warmth of Lucas's arms. He felt the slow rise and fall of Lucas's chest beneath his head. For a moment, he didn't move, just breathing, just existing in that quiet togetherness. Lucas opened one eye slowly, catching Adrian looking at him. "You're up early," he whispered, voice still soft and husky from sleep. "I couldn't sleep," Adrian admitted, shifting slightly but staying close. "I just like being here." Lucas smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from Adrian's face. "Me too," he murmured, pressing a soft kiss to Adrian's forehead. They didn't need to say more. Sometimes love didn't require words. It lived in gestures, in warmth, in the quiet intimacy of shared space. Lucas rolled over gently, propping himself up on one elbow. Adrian mirrored him instinctively. Their hands brushed and then found each other, fingers lacing naturally. No announcements. No promises needed. Just presence. Later, in the kitchen, they moved together like a quiet dance. Lucas poured coffee while Adrian unpacked breakfast. Small touches passed unnoticed, fingers brushing, shoulders nudging, shared smiles when one accidentally spilled a little sugar. Careful, Lucas said with a teasing grin. Adrian rolled his eyes. This channel tells quiet stories. No labels. Just connection, comfort, and choosing love. Thank you for being here. More stories soon.